what freedoms do you all enjoy? An example may be the freedom to run a business, or the freedom to vote, or my occasional favorite, the freedom to smoke legal marijuana. So think about it for a moment, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of freedoms that you came up with. We have a lot of them. So what do you think? What are a couple freedoms? They could be small or big. Brandon?
Freedom of speech, I think, is very important.
Nice, yeah. Marcia, can you think of any?
I'm a business owner as well, so the freedom to be able to start something and then own something, ownership here in America, I'm really appreciative of.
Yeah, thank you. It's going to go along great with what I have to talk about. Can you think of anything, Mike?
The freedom to drink coffee.
You would. So yeah, those are all really great. Freedoms, we should talk about them a lot more. We have a ton of them as Americans, and we really take them for granted. And when we really think about the root of those freedoms, when we push past our cultures and our relationships and systems and governments, what do we get? We have the freedom to live. And specifically, we have the freedom to live here on Earth and in Seattle, which is an amazing place. I love living in Seattle. And today I'm going to discuss that freedom to live, and I hope that I can evoke that freedom in you, and that we can, my purpose is to consider our relationship to the Earth and how we can solve major issues like climate change. And I also hope that we can consider with that indigenous people that live in our area, and how their relationship to the earth is during this crisis. Because I truly believe that the freedom to live is something that we do all deserve, and that we should talk about more, and I hope that we can see it through a new lens. So today we have three things that come along with our freedom. And the first is the power to impact the earth. The second is our responsibility to give back to the earth. And the third is the lack of knowledge that we have of the earth, which I will discuss later. And before I begin, I want to mention that I will be discussing a lot of things about Native peoples, and I am not the most qualified to speak on these things, because I lack the indigenous experience. But I hope that by talking about it and sharing this space, that we can respectfully and learn and engage in their culture and in their land and in their ancestors, and we can feel that kind of presence here with us. And I think that we can. So first, we have the responsibility on us as freedom to live here on the earth, to give back. Actually, I'm going to start with the power. So we have the power, I use double-sided. We have the power to impact. I believe that because of the freedom of live, we have the power to impact the earth immensely. We have a lot of it. And we see that in the waste we have and the emissions we have as humans. We see that in the children we have and in our relationships with people, that we're able to support them and support our communities. We see that in capitalizing off of money and resources of the earth. We see the power in taking care of animals and plants. We see that in innovating seemingly impossible technologies and furniture. We see it in curing viral illnesses that seemingly we wouldn't be able to do. We also see it in creating a ridiculous culture of staring at tiny screens that are making our eyes hurt and giving us mental illnesses. Seems like we could do anything as humans. And we have been. And I believe that because we have all of that power, it also has an impact on frontline communities. And when we talk about frontline communities, these are people that experience climate change first and worst near us. And whether or not we act with that power that we have sensibly, or we act not at all, these frontline communities are impacted. And that is kind of the real brunt of what we discuss in climate change. So in our area, the coastal Salish tribes near us, I'm going to try to say them, so if I say it wrong, I'm sorry. These local tribes include Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Nisqually, Puyallup, Saxuatl, Skagit, Snoqualmie, Squaquin, Sahawimish, Skykomish, Snohomish, Stillaguamish, Suquamish, and Swinomish, or the Salish. They will be the first ones to go through all the ish, if you will, with climate change. Jokes aside, there are 29 federally recognized tribes in Washington, and I encourage all of us to better learn what we can about the tribes around us so that we can understand the power that we have impacting these people. So the second thing that we have, having the freedom to live, is the responsibility to give back to the earth. I believe that we could help solve the climate crisis if we feel like that responsibility is something that we can work together with people to solve. When thinking about giving back to the earth, this is very important. We must not think about it like a trade, the way we do with trading money for goods. That is a linear move. It is something that we can see. We look at it this way with growth and progress, like it's like a linear momentum. We use lines and charts to describe how we want to solve issues. These are lines, and indigenous people, they actually use the circle, and this circle is sacred to them. And we see the circle in things of the earth, found in nature. We see the cycle of seasons and all of life. It makes a circle. And it is possible that we've all been involved in a circle as well. It could be a circle where people in your community come together in a safe space to discuss things, kind of like this. And it could be for therapy, for spiritual guidance, or for decision making. But this circle tradition, this coming together as people, is actually an indigenous cultural rite and practice. So we should remember that also when we gather together. And circles, perhaps of natives and non-natives alike, together, may be used to deal with small and large-scale issues like climate change. And they are very effective for communicating and making effective decisions. And decisions like how to give and what to give back to the earth, so that we're not thinking in that linear way. The circle of life, and I'm not quoting Lion King here, is what guides us through the freedom to live respectfully and intuitively. It involves all things. And I gave you all a letter here. This is the letter from the Chief Seattle in 1952 to the President of the United States. And we're not going to read the entire thing, but I encourage you to read it later. This is a beautiful piece of narrative that I found recently of Native history and American history. So I was actually very surprised that I haven't read it before. And it was written after many colonizers had already, overrun and killed many Salish people in this area. And there are some key points that and themes that Chief Seattle repeats throughout it. And one of them is the connectedness and giving and living nature of the earth. Starting with, if we sell you our land, remember that the air is precious to us, that the air shares its spirits with all the life it supports. The wind that gave our grandfather his first breath also receives his last sigh. The wind also gives our children the spirit of life. So if we sell you our land, you must keep it apart and sacred, as a place where man can go to taste the wind that is sweetened by the meadow flowers. Chief Seattle highlights the responsibility we have to care for and love the land like they do, knowing that, there's nothing they could do to stop these colonizers from coming in and taking the land. He says, we are all a part of the land. This we know, the earth does not belong to man, man belongs to the earth. All things are connected. like the blood that unites us all. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand of it, where whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. You can hear the wisdom in these words and the power, and there's something about it that just rings true to our hearts, and we all know this. But we do a poor job of truly living these words. And this leads to my third and final point, that we lack the knowledge to take care of the earth. And I believe because of our freedom to live, we should actively strive to learn more about the earth and strengthen that knowledge. This is not to suggest that we don't already know a lot about the earth, or that science and technology are not true appendages of life and evolution. And it is also not to say that technology does not have a lot of the solutions to climate change, because it might. However, this is to say that we should learn from and with Native people, for they are the ones that have this divine spiritual knowledge throughout generations. And however, at a recent indigenous reparation panel in Seattle, Fern Renville from the Dakota Nation stated, "Who is in a better position to navigate traumatic, fast change than the Native peoples?" Kind of hurts to hear that when we think about what they've gone through, but it feels right. They are very good at this. And a key point I want to make here is that we must learn to live and respect the earth and people around us the way Native people do. And if a white feather Navajo medicine man explains, Native American isn't blood, it is what is in the heart. The love for the land, the respect for it, those who inhabit it, and the respect and acknowledgement of the spirits and elders. This is what it means to be Indian. If we don't learn to respect first the indigenous people near us, and next their knowledge that they have of the earth, we will slip as a species, and because of the power that we do have as humans, we may bring the earth with us. We should empower their communities so they can pass their knowledge to future generations and to us. We should better represent Natives in our politics and begin to ask for their consent to enter their spaces. Fern from Dakota also said, "When we strengthen our people, we strengthen all people." And I believe we can. May we not strong arm as non-natives and work together. After all, this is their land that we freely live on, specifically the Duwamish, Puyallup, and Muckleshoot tribes in this area, and we thank them for that freedom. And we hope we can work together in reparation, using our power and responsibility to learn the circular ways of life and solving this climate unrest. Thank you.